Call to order for today's meeting, April 3rd, Historic Preservation Board. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Young?
Here.
Member Hurley?
Here.
Member Dashiell?
Here.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Here.
Chair Lowry?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, first we have on the meeting the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to add to today's meeting?
I have two additions for discussion item. One being public fundraising for city-owned historic resources or historic designated properties, and what those policies and procedures are for that. And the other is kind of a follow-up and clarification on the utility and communication poles that we discussed in December for the historic district, but also how they're being installed throughout the rest of the city too.
Okay, so we'll put those down as discussion items 5C and 5D.
And then also an update from the museum.
Okay, that will make that 5E. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
Chair, if staff could add an information item regarding a lot combination for 2103 and 2105 Gulfway.
That's what did you say, 2105 and 2103 Gulfway?
Correct.
And should we do that after the discussion? Does that make sense, I suppose, or?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll make that, I guess.
Information item.
It already is one. 6B, okay, got it. Okay, anyone else?
I'd like to just talk about the waiving of the sod bonds. So if that could be perhaps F,
5F, and what is that again?
the waiving of the sod bonds for people that have to do the,
I thought it was going to be an acronym for something I didn't know, so we're talking about.
You're talking about sodding when they do
Real
the
sod.
demolition?
Yeah.
right, yes.
Okay, we'll make that 5F. Okay, well, let's move forward then. Well, excuse me, at this time, then I make a motion that we go ahead and approve the approval of the agenda.
Second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next is item 3, approval of minutes. Has anyone had an opportunity to read March 6th Historical Preservation Board meeting minutes?
I have, and I'll approve. I think, do we need to do audience comments first?
Yeah. Not that we're trying to shut anybody out. This is an opportunity for y'all to make comments about anything that you'd like to make a comment about. However, if you're here to talk about something that's specifically on the agenda, you can wait and make that comment at that time. So this is just kind of a general comment thing. So does anybody have a comment they'd like to make before we start the rest of the meeting? Okay, so as I said, if you're here for certain things on the agenda, you can make your comments at that time. When we do that, though, you need to make sure when you approach, you give your name and address before you speak. All right? Okay, so let's go to the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the March 6, 2025 Historic Preservation Board meeting.
All right, I'll second that motion. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Member Young?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, so moving on to item 4, action items. I guess we should, at this point, I'm going to have those people who intend on speaking at some point to raise, to be sworn in by Madam Clerk at this time. So if anybody intends on speaking, we need to get you sworn in.
Anyone who will be speaking to the board or making a presentation needs to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the information that you are about to give or present to the board is truthful?
Yes.
So sworn.
Okay. First action item is election of officers for 2025 to 2026. We're here to elect a chair and vice chair for a one-year term. Does anybody have any motions or discussions about what we want to do on that?
I do. I would like to make a motion that we opt to maintain our current appointments if our current appointments will accept.
And by that appointments, you're referring to me being the chairman and Ms. Hawkinsmith being the current vice chair or vice
Yes.
chair. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Anybody have a second?
I'd
for that?
second that motion.
All right, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Deschler?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Laurie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now we'll go to 4B, action item, which is the local historic designation, case number 24097 of the residents located at 410 87th Avenue. Who's present? Lynn, please?
Good afternoon. Lynn Rossetti, contract planner for the city of St. Pete Beach. Okay, this is the local historic designation of property at 410 87th Avenue. This single-family structure was constructed in 1956, and I have handed out to you a revised Florida Master Site File form that I did. I had the wrong date in there, but I have submitted it to the Florida Master Site File, so they are going to have to edit it for me. But I just wanted to bring that up, that the correct date is 1956. The North Beach area actually is an area of the city that was the primary single-family residential neighborhood of St. Petersburg Beach prior to the consolidation in 1957, I believe. So this house is mid-century in nature. That whole neighborhood, I have undertaken a windshield survey of that neighborhood, and I believe I told you that I have submitted a grant application for this whole area to be granted a historic survey grant, and that is pending now. I believe I told you that it scored very well, and we will know by around the 1st of July if that is going to be funded as well. But in the meantime, we encountered, or our buildings encountered, Helene and Milton, which did some damage to properties in the North Beach area. This particular property was in excellent condition prior to it being flooded and those two hurricanes ripping up its roof. The property owner is extremely interested in keeping her property, the character that it was when she bought it, and is very interested in keeping the mid-century feel. And she said, well, can we apply for a district, can we apply for a local historic designation? And the way that we would do that would be by my doing a Florida Master Site File form, sending that off to the state, and I made a determination that should that area be considered a historic district, that would be a contributing property. We have, let's see. So we've got some photographs of the house, and this was a photograph that was taken in 2014. 2022, and now 2025. You can see where the water discolored the brick and then the tarp on the roof. The house did get flooded inside to some degree, and so there are damages inside the house that also need to be repaired. Staff is supporting this application to locally designate 410 87th Avenue as a historic property, we find that the building is significant in the following areas. It reflects the broad cultural, economic, and social history of the North Beach neighborhood and St. Pete Beach, and it's reflective of the North Beach and St. Pete Beach's community planning and development efforts. We are recommending a motion to approve case number 24097 for local historic designation of this single family structure at 410 87th Avenue. Thank you. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rossetti. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Rossetti?
Thank you.
Okay. Is anybody here to speak on behalf of this application? Okay. Anybody have any discussion about this?
Is this
Comment?
our first designation in that district?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, with that, I would make a motion to approve case number
24097.
24097, 410 87th Avenue for local historic designation.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Young?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now we're going to 4C, local historic designation for case number 25028, 103 18th Avenue. Mr. Martinez, you have a presentation? Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, board members. This is case number 25028. It is an application submitted by Carolyn Cadell for the Pass-a-Grille Shores condominium and its associated owners. It is for local historic designation for the condominium situated at 103 18th Ave in Pass-a-Grille neighborhood. Here are some very early promotional documents as well as renderings and layout of the structure going back to 1954, I believe. It was originally apartments and then it became condominiumized, and here's some historic pictures of property as well as some of people that resided in their building.
Even the cat lady?
Apparently.
No, okay.
Photos of the property at 1999 as well as 2015. And here are some current shots of the property in 2025. Staff supports this application for local historic designation of 103 18th Avenue as a historic building. Staff finds that the building is significant in that it follows and embodies the distinctive visible characteristics of an architectural style and period, and it exemplifies and reflects the broad cultural and political, economic, and social history of the city and the Pass-a-Grille neighborhood. Staff recommends approval of the local historic designation of the 4-unit structure at 103 18th Ave, case number 25028. I am here to take any questions you may have, and I believe maybe the applicant is here as well. Not
Okay.
certain.
Anyone have any questions for Ms. Martinez?
No.
Okay. Anybody like to speak on this application? Ms. Cadell, could you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, I'm Carolyn Cadell, 103 18th Avenue, Pass-a-Grille, St. Pete Beach. I'm here with my co-owners, Jan Woodruff, Bill Rice, and Charles Bishop. We represent each of the units, although not every person who is an owner could be here today. And Jan, by the way, is a descendant of the cat lady. So if you have any questions
Wash my
about
mouth. There I know.
just to ask her. We all want to express our appreciation for your consideration of our request. We really appreciate your time. The interior of this building has been updated, but the only 2 changes that have ever been made to the exterior are the windows and the addition of a second floor screen porch in the back of the building, exactly on top of the original screen porch, so the footprint is the same. We think the building has very good bones. We've taken good care of it, and we hope it's going to be around for a long time. 2 of the units in the building have never been sold. The other 2 have been purchased by the people who own the other 2. So the building has been sort of in the family since 1952, when the 4 couples who rented the building decided to purchase it together. So we have a lot of memories and activities there, our children, our grandchildren, nieces and nephews, and we're headed toward the 4th generation of ownership, possibly quickly because we're kind of historic ourselves. But in any event, we are looking forward to, we know Paso Grille's changing. We're looking forward to at least securing the future of this structure on 18th Avenue. Happy to answer any questions, as my co-owners will be as well.
Right. Well, I like to say I love the building. Not that it really makes a difference. I never knew it was called the Marco. I do like that you actually found the original plans. And I find it really commendable that the idea that people that first rented it wound up building it, buying it, just shows how much they obviously love Paso Grill, which is a great thing. And I would assume there must be some photo albums out there that have some great old pictures besides of the cat lady. So make sure you get those to someone who can preserve those if they've survived the flood, because I know the museum was always looking for that kind of stuff, as well as other people. And I also, just to comment, I've seen these postcards of, I guess it was the Cameo at the time, but it shows your place, but also shows it before they had the pool and then after they got the pool, which was pretty good. Anybody have any questions of Ms. Cadell or anyone else?
I think the Cadell family is going to be noted master curators in St. Pete Beach. You each own a historic property now, so that's very nice.
Actually, there's 3.
There are 3.
Because Mel, yeah.
Yep, Mel.
And that's probably it.
Yeah, and along that line, I just was able to, one of my neighbors has an extensive collection of photographs and old postcards and pamphlets and stuff like that. And there's one really great one it's not dated, but because they mention who the governor is, I looked up that governor, and it's from so it's somewhere between 1929 and 1933. But it's a really great pamphlet talking about Paso Grill and the community, back then. It has a bunch of home pictures. I'll make copies and bring it in. But also one of the homes they have that they just show, they don't have an address, is your brother's house.
Oh, yeah.
So that even back then it was kind of historic, so it's pretty neat.
It's a great.
So I'll get some copies of that stuff to you folks, but it's really interesting. And when I'm going to mention this, when we do our guidebook, that has a lot of interesting stuff that we could add to the preface of it and that kind of thing. But all right, very good. Okay, anybody else have any questions?
I think, too, this would probably qualify if we end up doing a group designation like we talked about at one time, Lynn, for properties that have things in common. The builder of this property also built the Cameo, Camelot, and a number of other buildings around Paso Grill that are still standing, and a few of which have local designation, too. So it's really nice to have it in the collection.
Yeah, and this just made me think of something, too, because these are individual condominiums, and I know they're all 4 we're talking about now, and they're all within the same group. Let's just hope you all stay together, from the standpoint that, there's a reason not to, but I suppose down the line somebody could decide that they don't want to be historic. Not that it makes a difference, really. You can always say that. So, all right, does anybody have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that local historic designation for case number 25028, 103 18th Avenue be granted.
I'll second that. I'll second that motion.
Yep. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you, folks. Okay, 4D, Certificate of Appropriateness for demolition case number 25036 for the residents at 207 Gulf Way. Brandon?
Pull the PowerPoint, please. This is Certificate of Appropriateness, case number 25036 for 207 Gulf Way. The applicant, Sarah Sullivan of DHM Construction Services, is present for Philip Gardner, the owner. The applicant's requesting a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of the contributing single-family structure. So you can see here some photographs of the outside of the structure, 2015 on the left, 2025 on the right. This is, of course, the third of the trio that were constructed in similar form back in the late 40s, I believe. You've seen the other two over the past couple of months. The one to the north was placed on the local historic registry. The one to the south is proposed for demolition. And you can see here some interior photos. As always, these demolition requests cannot be denied, but they can be stayed for up to 30 days. However, in this case, staff finds that the applicant has supported demolition request without need for delay. The structure was found by the city to have sustained substantial damage. The lot is capable of supporting a replacement single-family residence during reconstruction. It won't deprive them of the existing use of the property. And the damage from the storms has been documented. It is evident to staff. So because of that, we request a motion to approve case number 25036 for demolition of the residence at 207 Gulf Way, and that would be without a stay on demolition.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Berry? All right, does anybody in the audience want to speak on this application? Okay. Anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve case number, and it went away.
Second.
Yeah, it's
25036.
Yeah, 207 Gulf Way. Okay. 25036, the demolition of the property and waive the 30-day stay.
And that's at 207 Gulf Way. I'll second that motion. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Young?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving along. 4E, certificate of appropriateness for the demolition, case number 25037 for, I think this is a duplex at 108 20th Avenue.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Mr. Berry, please.
You could pull up the PowerPoint. So as mentioned, this is case number 25037 for 108 20th Avenue. The SOAs are the owners and also the applicant for this request. They are requesting a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of the contributing single-family residence and apartment outbuilding at the subject property. Here's some photographs. We actually had a photo of this property from 1936 that was included with its property card, and there was a historic resources survey that the then board performed back in 1996. You can see that on the right as well. It has been picked up in all of our historic resource surveys. You can see here in 2015, this was when the most recent survey that the city completed, it was retained on the historic survey of properties. You can see here 2025 post-hurricane photos. There was fairly extensive damage to the structure that was also documented on the inside. This one would be eligible for a 30-day stay. Staff does not find justification for a 30-day stay. However, the applicant has made partial application to develop a new residence on the site. This will be brought back forward to you for design review. That is the request under which it was made. The applicant does have the ability to retain the 2 units on the property. That is the special provision in Paso Grill that's not allowed elsewhere in our city. However, the structure that was submitted for design review initially was larger than the combined living space of the 2 existing structures on the property. The city does limit, under the current code as well as the proposal that we're bringing forward to the City Commission for amendments, the requirement is to limit the living square footage to the existing developed living square footage. We will allow for additional non-habitable space like storage, parking, and so on, but there would be the limitation retained for the living space compared with what is on the property today. I believe the applicant has submitted more recent plans. I haven't had the chance to look at them, but I just wanted them to acknowledge that limitation moving forward prior to demolition. However, if that adequate testimony and acceptance is provided, I do request that this case be approved for demolition of the contributing structures at 108 20th Avenue without the 30-day stay.
Okay, I think I just need some clarification. So, I know that it's a duplex now, or it's 2 units, right?
Correct.
And if they tear it down,
Duplex per se. Walter Soa Jr., I'm the owner of the
Right.
property. And what it is, it's a single-family dwelling, about 1,800 square feet, with a guest cottage that sits in the back.
okay,
That is connected to each other. This has been, is it 1 building, 2 buildings, 3? It's got a common roof line with a carport between the house and the guest cottage, with the guest cottage being about 525 square feet.
okay.
Can I go ahead and, because this is new to me, what I just heard from the city staff.
Right, and that's why I was going to question
They're
about,
questioning my integration of the guest cottage into the property's single-family dwelling.
I get, that was what I was,
I am not going through variances.
okay, hold
I
on.
think this board can be fair to me, I can be fair to the city.
Okay, if you just wait a minute and let us talk, then we can talk about whether we've been unfair or fair to you, okay?
Let me go ahead and tell you.
Okay, let me just say, as a point of order, before you get to talk, we get to ask him questions.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, so that's, I don't mean to be rude, so I was going to,
I'm sorry, I
was-
don't attend these meetings.
I understand. I was going to ask Mr. Berry about that very issue that this gentleman wants to bring up. So I know that if it's a situation, I know they can't, if they want to rebuild it as 2 units, then they're limited to the footprint. But if they wanted to build a single-family residence, are they still limited to the footprint?
No, they would not be the same as
Okay.
any other design review. Now, this, again, was based on the initial submittal of floor plans. I believe a more recent submittal might have been sent in. I have not had a chance
Yeah, I
to
get
look at
it.
those yet, but they are delineated units within the same building, so we would consider that to be a 2-unit structure. There needs to be complete internal circulation throughout a structure for it to be considered 1 unit, and there was a division between the 2 units. So if the structure can be made larger under reconstruction, but the 2 units would not be able to be retained.
Right, I thought that was kind of where we were at, but I wanted to make sure it's the case. And that may not clarify anything to you right there, but it did to me a little bit. So go ahead, sir, please. I think
The city of St. Pete Beach issued a damage determination letter dated 11/21 that provides 2 solutions compatible with saving this building. 1, repair and elevate the existing building, which includes a guest cottage, carport connecting the 2 to the single-family house. Or number 2, abandon the lower level, leave it right there, and build on top of it. Isn't that a great alternative? I was trying to save this house until I got into the numbers, and here are the numbers. The National Flood Insurance Program Adjuster has determined the estimated cost to repair the current structure is $273,279 to repair it before elevation. The estimated cost for a pile-supported elevation, this is the least that we could do for elevation, came in at $264,000. The Pinellas County Property Appraiser estimates the pre-storm fair market value of the building to be $179,411. Can reasonable measures be taken to save the building? I believe that FEMA has defined reasonable for me as 50% of the adjusted pre-storm market value of the building, which in my case was $105,555. Got to get from 105 to 272 or 73 for repairs, but with a repair cost of $273,279 before elevation and being limited to $105,000 in repairs, it can only be defined as a total economic loss. Adding an elevation cost of $264,000 to the repair cost yields an overall cost to get it up to $537,279, which only compounds the loss situation and exacerbates the economic loss. The application for certificate of appropriateness for demolition asks two questions. One, is the building capable of earning a reasonable economic return on its value? And two, does perpetuation of the building, considering its physical condition, its location, and anticipated expense of rehabilitation, economically feasible? With pre-storm fair market value of $179,411 and minimum repair and elevation cost of $537,279, this residential building has no economic value. Granted that the post-repair elevation fair market value of building would likely increase. And would it increase, however, the building would still be built in 1926. The original building was built in 1926, the 1,800 square feet, and the cottage was built in about 1950-51 for 500 feet. It was built to undeterminable living standards or building standards at the time. This 99-year-old beach cottage built for winter month getaways, constructed at a time with unknown building standards, situated in an environment that is susceptible to hurricanes of increasing magnitude, all of which does not pretend to rehabilitation being economically feasible. We have submitted new reconstruction plans for design review, and I believe there will be on next month's meeting if, we review those, whatever. But these plans were developed to be a simple and basic 1926 looking garage, but at a level of 12 feet above base flood elevation. I can't come down less than 12 feet. Any recommendations to me from the board on the plans would be greatly appreciated. I'm open for questions.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this first. Are you aware that you could try to have your home designated historic and then get a FEMA variance and repair it?
Get it designated what?
Historic. Get it?
Historic.
Like these folks right here a minute ago, they were getting...
Okay, no, I am not aware of that, and I would not choose to do that.
Okay, because if that would...
I have lived with this building for
Pardon me?
25 years. I have been here since 1998.
Okay.
I have crawled the crawl space underneath the main house every year for 20 years. I stopped crawling about 5. When I got here in 1998, I went under that crawl space, and it was nothing but a labyrinth of 2x4s, 4x4s. I'm the third owner.
Okay.
The second owner was an ingenious little guy who kept this thing up.
Right, okay.
I tore it all out. We got an engineer in there, and we re-leveled the whole building, and we put in new struts that would take water and what have you. But we looked at elevating then, and the answer was, we don't know what's going to be there when we get there.
Right.
So now maybe elevation science has come a long way in the last 25 years. But I'm of the belief that it's not worth elevating to begin with.
Okay.
Because of the structures, building materials, and that type of thing.
That wasn't what I was asking. Okay. Your house, the way it sits right now, okay, if it was historically designated, which you probably qualify for, I'm sure you do because it's over 50. Can I finish first?
Well, you can, but again, I didn't get involved in it. I didn't know about it until like maybe a month ago.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure that you know all the things that are alternatives you have. Okay, one of the alternatives you have, which you didn't mention, you just mentioned either you have to elevate it or tear it down. There's another alternative, which is if you get historically designated, then after that you can apply for a FEMA variance because your house is now historic and you can repair your house even though it's more than the 50%. So you could repair your house as it is
Right.
by taking those steps. If you don't want to, that's fine. We love old houses. We'd love to keep all of them that we can. And so I want to make sure that you know that that's an option you have. If you've decided it's too big of a hassle or it's better off just being knocked down and something new that's built, that's fine. That's your decision, okay? And so I'm just telling you or mentioning to you that you do have another
I
alternative.
didn't know that.
Okay,
Now that I know it, I didn't know it, I didn't miss anything, because
okay, well,
I do not want to go through this again.
well, go through what again? Go through what, a storm, or go through having to come in here again?
Going through the storm and doing whatever to recover from the storm.
Okay, well, here's the way,
I spent 25 years in the Navy, and when we came on a situation or problem, we either fixed it or walked away. One of two things.
okay, well, I'm giving you an opportunity, an alternative.
fixing
There's an alternative to fixing it that you apparently aren't aware of, if you want to do that.
No, I don't.
Okay, so you
'Cause
do,
it'll still be at elevation 3 feet.
yes, correct.
No.
Okay, so as long as you don't want, okay, now we go to the next issue, and that's fine, now that I feel we're all comfortable that you know that you don't want to, you want to demolish your house, that's fine. The other issue that Mr. Berry was talking about is, and this is not something we have a choice about, if you decide to build it, elevate it and build a new structure, okay, and if you plan on making it 2 units again, okay, then you're limited to the footprint that it is now, albeit up in the air. All right? So you can't make it any bigger. If you want to knock it, let me finish. If you want to knock it down and build 1 residential home, you can build it bigger.
I want the same thing as I got now at 12 feet.
Okay, so you
That's what
understand?
the plans say, you know, as best we could do. It
Okay.
might be plus or minus 25 square feet. I don't, you know.
Well, that's the issue that we are handcuffed by, is that
I
you
know,
can't
I
build it any bigger. If
I
you
don't want to go through the variance issues. I'm trying to live within the construction.
I get that, I get that. Here's the thing. For us to grant you the demolition permit, which we would do, you have to acknowledge, you understand you can't make it a bigger, the square footage can't be any bigger. Okay, because what we don't want is somebody knock their house down and then say, oh, I was gonna build this bigger house, and now you tell me I can't do it. So up front, we have to tell you, if you're using it as 2 units, you have to maintain the original square footage. A lot of people don't want to do that because the property is very valuable and they want to build a bigger place.
I want the square footage, and I believe these plans represent that.
I don't know. I don't review the plans. I think there was a,
You had gotten them already, but apparently.
well,
No, we'll be bringing that forward, like you mentioned, next month for design review. That'll be.
That's for me.
Correct. But we're commenting on this now for the reason the chair just brought up. I don't want to create a situation where yourself or others that have come to this board in the past demolish their homes without understanding that there may be limitations. Now, the footprint, I believe, is the same. I have not looked at the revised design plans, but part of the footprint of the home currently is the carport between the cottage and the main residence. That is not currently considered living space. It looks like in the plans that are proposed, you would be enclosing that and making it living space. So that would be an increase in living space. The footprint of the building would be the same, but you would be enclosing that area. So because of that, that would not be in alignment with the code. And as you mentioned, you would need to go for a variance for that if that's something you were looking to do. If you were to keep the living square footage the same, you would not face that limitation and you would be able to move forward with it administratively.
Well, the setbacks issue has come back and forth, back and forth. If we live in RLM 20 or RLM 2, whatever that is, it's 20 front, 20 back.
the setback's not an issue right now.
It is, because what he is saying, that I
Okay.
am converting carport space to living space, and I am not.
Okay, so let me ask this question.
Within the setbacks of the historic district, 10 feet in the front, 15 feet in the
Okay.
back, 5 and 5.
Okay.
Square footage comes up to be 2,400, somewhere in there.
Okay, do you have a second floor over the carport? will you build a second floor over the carport? You're not going to have a two-story carport, are you?
The carport is going to end up being parking space underneath the building,
Okay, is there going to be anything above the carport?
yes.
Is that going to be enclosed?
The part that's, yes.
Then you've increased your square footage because now you've added living space between the two structures.
The thing is, you're taking current living space within certain setbacks that are not 10 and 15 feet, okay? They are like 5, and the front of my house is on the sidewalk.
Sir, I'm not here to argue about setbacks, okay? I mean,
Well, I'm not either, but we're talking about living square footage area, and I'm saying it's the same as there now if you take the cottage, exclude the carport, add this living square footage to the area of the house, it equals the new building within the current setbacks. What more do you people want from us?
well, first off, when you say you people, I haven't even looked at your plans, okay?
Well,
We're just trying to help you out up
Here
here.
as best I could, you know?
I get that. I get that. But I'm trying to make sure, without being argumentative, that you understand everything that we're getting ready to do. And Mr. Barry, who we've done many, many, many things with, you're not the first person.
Excuse me, a couple of times now, we have gone back and forth, and do you understand what I'm saying to you when I say, take this current square footage living area between the cottage and the house, move it into the setbacks that are currently in Passive Grill, is the square footage equal? Is that the same?
It's the same, but the plans, and again, there are revised plans. I have not looked at those yet. The original plans that I looked at briefly, it showed a living square footage greater than what the property is.
It's built into the rear setback right now.
I understand what you're saying, okay? I understand what you're saying. I just want, and that's fine. I just want to make sure that you understand that if we award you this demolition permit, which we are bound to do, that there are some limitations that we can't control, that he's brought up. You seem to understand and rectify those issues, and if that's okay, that's fine. What we don't want is after you've knocked your house down to come back and say, I didn't know that that was going to happen.
Understood.
Mr. Berry, do you feel that his testimony, as what he says, satisfies what we need to move forward with this?
I do. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so with that, I will make a motion to grant the certificate of appropriateness for demolition, case number 25037 for the residents of 108 20th Avenue.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Young?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And also, sorry, I should have put this in the motion, and we would be waiving the 30-day notice. You want me to redo that motion so it says it now?
Please.
Okay, so we may want to second that with the 30-day waiver.
I'll second that.
All right, Madam Clerk, a roll call again, please.
Okay. Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, you're good to go.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, now we're at 4. I'm sorry.
Did we do a 30-day notice on this one?
We waived it.
One before?
We waived it, I believe. Was that in part of the motion?
We waived it.
It wasn't the other one? Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay.
I did say it.
Yeah, I couldn't remember either. Good, thank you. Okay, 4 F is the recommendation of ordinance 2025-08 to the City Commission. Mr. Berry?
Yes, we could pull up the PowerPoint again. This is a continued on item from the last meeting. This is related to the amendments to the CRD 8th Avenue. If I can get to it.
Where am I here?
Sorry about that. So this is particularly only ordinance 2025-08, 2025-07 has been recommended to the City Commission. I plan to take that to the Planning Board next month for formal, well, actually it's this month now, in April, for formal recommendation. That will be moving forward. We did meet with our design consultant just a few days ago and anticipate that we'll be working on the design guidebook fairly soon, so I'll keep you up to date on that as well. So the proposed language, it goes back to the discussion that we had last meeting about the building height and it being out of line with what was originally adopted for the district when the district was brought in back in 2013. What I had drafted was based on the base flood elevation, but also giving an exception for those buildings that are eligible to be built at grade. Those that need to be elevated would be eligible for that additional height overrun, subject to a step back. I went back and I looked at what was in place when the when the CRD 8th Avenue was adopted back in 2013, and the city at the time used in its definition of height a term called required flood elevation. That's not a defined term. It's not a term that the building code uses. It's not anywhere in the city's flood ordinance. It's also not a term that's used by FEMA. So what I went back and forth with the floodplain manager about was how to revert back to that based on what I believe the intent was, preserving that intent where we're not just using the base flood elevation for every structure, but going with what is required for the elevation of a structure. That's to prevent the loophole where someone is eligible to build a mixed use or a standalone commercial or office building at grade, and they're then eligible because the base flood elevation on the east side, for example, is 7 to 8 feet above the ground. It gives them the ability to build a structure that's 7 to 8 feet taller than it was originally intended. However, we do want to preserve what was in place back in 2013 with that required flood elevation, what I believe to be the intent with that. And that's for those structures that are required to be elevated to the base flood or above the base flood elevation. That's in the CRD 8th Avenue, that is particularly temporary lodging facilities that do not have any ground floor commercial development. Those cannot be flood proofed. They do need to be elevated. So we do need to provide for those based on what was in place back in 2013. I had discussed that with the city attorney's office in the past, and I did review that with them again in the past month. So what I came up with as a proposal is that Section 40.8 will address building height, and height shall not exceed 35 feet above the required lowest floor elevation of the structure. Lowest floor elevation is a defined term that's used in the building code. It's also something that is used by FEMA and defined by FEMA. When this results in a structure greater than 35 feet in height measured from grade, a minimum step back of 10 feet on each side of that floor over 35 feet above grade shall be provided.
Sorry to interrupt, just so you're right on that, but so 10-foot setback, north, south, east, west, you're talking about?
That would be from the frontage.
From the frontage, okay. Go ahead, sorry.
So the required lowest floor elevation, that is the lowest a habitable floor can be built and still be compliant with floodplain management regulations. So that would be for any commercial structure, any mixed-use structure, any standalone commercial or office, that would generally be at grade along 8th Avenue. So it can be built at grade. The measurement is taken from grade. It replaces that former language that was in the code back when the CRD 8th Avenue was developed. That was required flood elevation. Again, that is an undefined term. There's nothing we can really tie that back to, but I believe the expectation back then was that it be the lowest required lowest floor elevation. So again, just to reiterate, properties that can be flood-proofed and left at grade, those are commercial, office, mixed-use developments, must be 35 feet tall as measured from grade. Those properties that have the lowest level elevated must step back the story above 35 feet by 10 feet. So again, they would still be limited to the base flood elevation for that one single use on 8th Avenue that is required to be elevated above the design flood elevation, but when they have that, they must step back the story above 35 feet.
Should that third be, must be no more than 35 feet tall?
Yeah, the second bullet, you mean?
The third.
Well, both
yes,
of
the
them,
second bullet.
both of them should be. I mean,
Instead
it's
of
basically
must
saying
be
you have to
35
build a
feet
35 feet.
Must be no
more
taller. I'm sorry about that. Yes, no taller than 35 feet
Okay.
in both cases.
I have a clarity question.
Sure.
So we're building in the middle of the block. They've got roughly a 4 foot above flood based on elevation.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to hand them another elevated flood-proofed area and then put 35 feet on top of it. You're covered that now.
No, this would be for anyone who chooses to have a commercial office standalone or with a mixed use. If they're eligible to build at grade, we would start that measurement at grade. So it would be 35 feet measured from grade as the.
I have another question to throw out there along that line.
Mhm.
So we are limiting our total height at 35 feet.
Yes.
We are giving away the required flood elevation, but that's based on sea level, not on grade.
Correct. Yes.
If they want to flood-proof the bottom floor and do something commercially, they can, but they're only going to have one floor above them, roughly, to do development. Or are we tacking on extra footage? I'm trying to be sure that we've managed to close that loophole.
So for someone who chooses to build at grade and flood-proof their structure, their required lowest floor elevation is at grade, wherever that might be. I have a map on the next slide
Okay,
that'll
yes,
show
you
that.
Send it out to us.
And so that they would be measuring 35 feet from grade to the top of that structure. That would be the maximum height. So that would be, possibly 2 stories over the commercial level, but they would be limited to 35 feet.
35 feet is still our maximum height, no matter how we slice it.
Correct.
Unless we're talking about a lodging scenario.
Yeah, right. So, and it would still be 35 feet for lodging, but that would be measured from the required lowest floor elevation, which would be from design flood. So if you were to see a development on the east side, I'll move on to that slide. You can see that the elevation changes from roughly 3 to 3.5 on Pass-a-Grille Way. It goes up to approximately 5.5 to 6 feet along Gulf Way. On the west and east sides of the block, the elevation is roughly the same relative to NAVD 88. It's 10 feet coastal. In the center is 9 feet non-coastal. So you would see a lodging facility specifically on the east side elevated slightly higher than a lodging facility on the west side proposed that there were new development. But when you're measuring from grade, if you have a mixed-use development, standing at grade, measuring from grade, it's going to be the exact same height on the east side as it is in the center, as it is on the west side. So it would be 35 feet.
Okay.
So
That's
that,
all of my question.
Yeah, okay, good. And so this, what you just showed us a minute ago with the intent, the 3 bullet points and stuff there, the last slide, that's now added to the ordinance, is that correct?
correct. And I had concerns about reverting back to the term that we used in 2015 because it's undefined. There's nothing we can tie that to, but required lowest floor elevation is something that's defined in the flood regulations. So we know what that means, and there won't be any interpretation questions moving forward.
Okay, and can you, what section is that intent that you're just talking about in? 40 what?
This is 40.8 for the building height. We took out, it had been in a different section. We did remove all those references. 40.8 is now where height is measured along.
I get that, but the part where you have intent,
So
is that in the ordinance?
This is in Division 2 of the Land Development Code. There isn't a unique height definition for the CRD 8th Avenue, so it reverts back to the general Land Development Code definition. That had been the definition in place prior to 2015. In 2015, we changed it, possibly unintentionally, for the 8th Avenue, where everyone measures from base flood. Height is always from base flood, and that's created the situation where it gives an additional 4 to 7 feet.
No, I get that. I understand. Here's my question. I'm with you 100% on what you've been saying, okay? My question is, if I'm a builder in the future and I want to look at the new ordinances if they go through, where do I read this part about intent? Shouldn't we include that in section 40?
Well,
Because isn't that specific to the CRD where the 35 feet thing is?
It's specific.
no, well, this section was drafted to convey everything that I relay on the next slide. It might be helpful to just add it. We don't have a definition section, but I could maybe make a reference to required lowest floor elevation being as defined in the floodplain management
Well,
regulations.
I think that would help clarify some things, but also, like I said, because this that intent language, or this building house language, does it go to any other section besides the CRD, section 40?
No, this is specific to the CRD.
So wouldn't it make sense, just to be clear, just to add that the intent parts you have, just add that in 40.08 for clarification?
We can do that.
And just so.
With the clarification of no more than or not greater than 35 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So it
think you
doesn't
wrote
say
that.
you have to do 35 feet.
Yeah. It's not tall enough. Please build it higher. That's what we're looking for. No, so, and so just so I'm clear in my mind, because people ask me and I'm, a lay person. So, for example, right now, in the CRDEA, the only structures that this would apply that are already built, and of course they're under 35 feet anyway, but those, so we don't really have any structures right now that fit this definition, is my understanding, right? And if a new structure was built, the only reason it would be over 35 feet, like we talked about from grade, is if it was purely a lodging place, not mixed use, no commercial aspect, et cetera. Okay. Okay. All right. Anybody have any more questions about this thing, or does that clarify everything? I understand. So it means anything.
Do we need to make a motion on anything?
If you can make a motion to recommend, if that's your,
Okay.
this is ordinance.
Can we make it as simple as make a motion to recommend the change, as Mr. Berry has presented, as well as the additional items we've just talked about, or do I need to be more specific about that?
I understand what you're looking for me to do, so that's fine with me.
Okay. Anybody want to second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Member Young?
Yes.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, so now we're on to discussion items. And discussion item 5A is the status of historic city facilities.
So just a brief update on this. I'll have likely a lot more information for you next month. However, we are looking at potentially the 22nd meeting of the City Commission on the 22nd to take forward the scopes for the Warren Webster, the Suntan Art Center, as well as the request for demolition of the Bait Shack and the Shuffleboard Court Clubhouse. We have gotten approval for repair of the roof at the Warren Webster, but there is some additional flooring and drywall work that needs to be done. So that would be part of the scope that's taken forward on the 22nd. I believe the reason for that was because we needed to have a full scope for FEMA purposes and reimbursement before we move forward to actually execute the contracts with our company, which looks like the request is with Cotton Global. So I know that was discussed with the City Commission last week, and we should have more information for you on that next week.
Brandon, were the new terrazzo floors in the Warren Webster building damaged?
Based on the cost, I don't believe so, but I can get that information. I think the estimate's only around $22,000, so I would expect.
I've been in there since then. For what it's worth, they look fine. Yeah. Okay. But you mentioned we already have a demo permit on the clubhouse, right?
Correct, yes. It's just formal authorization for the demolition from the commission. Yes.
Where we get the funding to do it, that type of thing you're talking about?
I believe it's tied with reimbursement. We need to have a full scope to submit to FEMA before we actually demolish the buildings, and that's what they're working on, and then we'll get that authorization on the 22nd and move forward with both.
All right. And we're going to have some discussions, but yeah. All right, really good. Okay, then we're now to 5B, historic plaque updates.
So unfortunately, we're still working with the company. Kristen, I'm sorry to call on you, but I don't think we have any more information. Is that right?
Good afternoon, Kristen Coleman, Senior Planner. As far as reaching out to the companies, there's a few, actually, it's odd that they're all based in Pennsylvania for historic plaques. I had reached out to Member Hurley, but I hadn't received any information. You
Can't remember where the paperwork was. I've been
Okay.
looking for it. I haven't been able to locate
I was
it.
hoping, and I've been searching our files
It
here.
might have been in a house that I was helping with, so
Sure.
I'm going to go back there next. I've been
Okay.
going through my personal files, and I haven't been able to find what I found, but
Okay, well, I appreciate if you come across that, golden ticket, that'd be great.
So you're looking for paperwork that has to do with people that got plaques before, like,
Well, or just
Yeah, it
the
had-
whole
it had-
program, what it entitled.
it had contact information, and et cetera. It had a design already in place. There was a cast already done, et cetera. All they had to do was change the numbers on it.
but was this something that was done?
When my uncle was on the historic board, so it was probably sometime in the early, mid-'90s.
I guess my question is, there are people who have gotten plaques, let's say 10 years ago, could they possibly have that information?
Yeah, that's why I'm going back to another house.
Okay, well, I might know a few people that have plaques too, is what I'm saying.
If
Right.
any of the members might have some information, that would be great. I've reached out to, again, a couple people in Pennsylvania that have done historic. I tried to reach out to, I believe it was Erie, that may have done the previous one, from what I could kind of filter through our
That
files.
sounds familiar.
But nobody's replied. But I definitely am working on it. So if anybody has any information, please throw it my way. I'd
Okay.
appreciate it.
I'm still looking.
Thank you.
Oh, I have a quick question. It says here that plaques aren't in the current commission budget.
Correct.
Do we know how much those plaques are individually?
I don't know until I have the information. I reached out to what I thought would be the original plaque company to get some of that historic information, how much we were charging, how much, of course, over time, it's going to go up, how much it would be in today's. So I don't know, depending, again, on size, and if they're customizable, that might bump it up a little bit as well.
Okay, all right,
As I
thank
recall,
you.
the letter that I read had to do with, it was individual homeowners' responsibility to purchase it, but they told them where to purchase it and how to go about it.
I think
Correct.
that's probably right.
And that's something we could do as well, just facilitate that to make sure they have the accurate number, all that information, for sure.
Although I was thinking that we should just, when people want a demo permit, they gotta kick money into the plaques. As a punishment.
And I think they'll slap us for surcharges.
Yes.
I think we only get $50 right now for a COA for demolition, so it's not really going to go far.
We'll see. Okay, thank you so much. All right. Now we're on to 5C, the public fundraising for historic. That's all I got. What wrote down.
So that was a discussion item that I wanted to add. Someone asked me about, there was something circulating about raising money for the reconstruction of Mary Pier. I don't know where that's originating from or who's organizing that or if it's just fluff on the street, but someone asked me to clarify what the policy is for public fundraising for city-owned property.
I also am only aware of it at the level of discussion, but it's something I'm going to address with the city manager's office, and I'll share information when we know. I've never been involved with soliciting donations for public buildings, so I don't know what the current policies and procedures are, but I'll speak with her about that and I'll let you know.
Okay.
But also, I have been involved in that, but I have not done that as part of the Historic Preservation Board, and that's why I haven't even really shared it with some of these people I have on it, because I don't think it's something that would ever go in front of us. I think it's a separate thing, but I've even met with the city manager and the public works people, and we're trying to kind of figure out that. We kind of need a starting point to understand, but it's my understanding there has been some precedent. I know the Mary Pier was put back together in the early 80s by the public. So it can be done, and it's just a matter of figuring out how I want to do that. And in an abundance of caution, because of the sunshine laws, I have not been talking to, I really don't, I try to project this ahead and think if it's ever an issue the historic board should be involved with, and I'm going to say it isn't. I think it's an issue the commissioners have to be involved with ultimately, but and we might need to get some clarification because of the people on the board here. They may have some interest in being involved in that. I've kept them out essentially at this stage, but it seems to me it would make some sense that they would have some interest in that. But there's been a number of people in the community that are definitely willing to contribute. There's talks of there's a street party in a month on 8th Avenue, that maybe there'd be some minor fundraising going on there if we could have some sort of idea. There's a lot of things going on, and all I can tell you is that it's going to be done by the book as far as that goes, but I just don't know. We don't really have a starting point yet. So I'm kind of answering your question in public, so with the sun beating on my head, so everyone.
No. So I know a lot of people are interested in getting some of those resources back up and usable and viewable again. So just want to make sure everybody can go about it
Yes,
in appropriate ways and appropriately streamed funds, and that
Correct.
it's not going to come back to.
And some of the issues have been, obviously, being on this task force, I was able to see a lot of the damage to and the monies involved to the properties that the city own and things they have to do that are certainly reasonable priorities before they would get to some of these historic sites. And without anyone telling me this directly, it would be a significant period of time before those things were gotten to. And so that's why I think some people in the community have interest in, and as quick as we can, revitalizing, the Mary Pier, for example, I think is the most symbolic thing we have on Paso Grill, even though technically it's not, I guess it's not historically designated. Right? It's not as a brand, I don't believe it is.
It's not, no. Although it's certainly eligible for site designation.
That's what I was
We
gonna-
got, we got a sign and it's not designated?
Yeah.
Well, see, here's the problem, and that's what I was going to, since it's kind of brought up, I didn't bring it for discussion item, but I don't know if we've ever, at least since I've been on the board, actually done a historic site. Okay? And certainly, I don't know what qualifies for that, other than what I know what the word site means. And because the problem with Mary Pier is, you're not going to have a pier that's 120 years old. It doesn't last that long. You're not going to have a building that's 120 years long. It doesn't last that
But
long.
it's been in location in perpetuality.
Well, that's why I think it's a historic site as opposed to the building being historically designated. And so I think we need to look into that. And that's one of the things I was going to talk to you independently about, just to see what we'd have to do or who would have to put that together, especially if a LLC group or something is formed to try to get behind the community doing this. So.
Lynn?
Brandon, do you have those photos, those two pictures?
I don't. Those are still in my office, I believe. Photos of the Mary Pier, if you don't mind.
Well, can we do? Let me just do this for a second. Hold on a sec, though. I don't want to be. I'm a little reticent that suddenly we're kind of talking about this as a historic board, because I'm going to want to have the freedom to talk to folks on the street without having to come through here every time. And I'm not saying we're doing that, but I don't know whether we just kind of keep that as a separate issue right now. You follow what I'm saying?
I understand.
What are they pictures of? Old pictures of the Mary Pier?
Yes, historic pictures of
Okay.
the Mary Pier. One from 1900 where it is two-story.
Yeah,
And then, but see, I've always considered the Mary Pier to be a site.
yes, but I don't know if it's officially been designated as a historic site. I don't know if the
I don't think
board
it's
has ever done that.
I'm not sure that it's been designated.
Well, the reason I say that, and this is where we get bleeding into other areas here, if we talk about redoing the bait shop on it, one of the ways would be doing it with a FEMA variation because it's a historic site or historic structure. We may not have to take that route. And so I would rather have those discussions independently without the board before we start making some decisions about how we might want to go about redoing, if the community is going to be involved, to redoing that, and try to keep the board removed from having to make any decisions about it, because it's really a community effort and not a board effort, So I can tell you I have, because of one of my neighbors, I have dozens of postcards from 1908, 1920, 1930, and the Mary Piers had about it was a two-story barn. It was a ticket booth. It was half the size it is now. It was doubled. And so it's changed quite a bit due to the nature of where it is, So,
But it continues.
yes, and so, well, it's condemned now. We want to get it open.
Yes.
So I will tread lightly as how I do things, but I'm doing this solely as a citizen of Paso Grill and not as a historic board member at this stage. Okay?
And I did want to say, we do have two historic sites, and I believe that's the Hurley and Paso Grill Park. Those are both in our,
Central Park too, where the shuffleboard club is. The building, the shuffleboard courts are still there. Well, so is the building, but,
Was the park a site, though, or just the club? So
It's
do we have a,
designated as a site.
so we have a site, but we also have an individual building on it?
Correct. Yes.
Gotcha.
right.
Well, I don't think the bait shop, I don't believe would, that current structure, I think, was put up there in the early 80s, so it's not even 50 years yet. And just to throw that out, you know, so.
But again, designation of the whole site would mean
Of
that
course.
the structure itself would not be that imperative.
Correct. So that's something, that's an option we should be looking at.
We should also take a look at the language that was submitted to the state for the marker,
Okay.
historic marker. It might clarify that.
Interesting. I mean, I wrote that, or most of it, so somebody added some that never remained silent as who they were, but,
It might have been considered a site.
it may be. If you could perhaps look that up.
I will check with the clerk's office.
Yes. All right, good, interesting.
Thank you.
So that's a work in progress. There's a lot of things to look into that. But when and if I get to the point, like I said, I'll just keep it as it is right now, and we'll just go from there. Okay, so do we have anything else on the, where are we at here? On the public fundraising? No, you just brought that up. Okay, so now we're at 5D on the utility poles, but I think that's the 5G poles we're talking about probably, right?
Right, the utility communication poles that we discussed in December. A very tall pole was put up on Maritana, just south of the Hotel Zamora, and I heard from a neighbor there, very upset with the historic board for approving that, as they were told by their commissioner. And just want to clarify, we didn't approve that.
no, you didn't approve
We
those.
didn't have we were told it wasn't our option. We couldn't approve it or disapprove it, that we could make recommendations and requests and.
As to
You
design.
got to choose color and design.
We couldn't keep it from happening. So I just want everybody to know, historic board did not approve those poles. And that particular one is quite high.
I haven't seen that.
Actually, that wasn't even one we discussed. We discussed only the one south of 32nd.
We only discussed the ones in the district,
Yeah,
but
and I think
this
they
one
only-
is out of the district.
I think, have they put more than one in? I know the one at Hurley Park, but I haven't seen another one.
No, there's one that's up around 32nd. It was one of the first ones that took, it was a picture of our exam, in our examples.
Okay. Yeah, I've gotten a few comments on it too and had to
Can you
explain.
review those guidelines again, Brandon, and then just talk about what's happening with that one?
Sure, and there's very limited basis for any one staff, any board, the commission to deny these. We were fairly heavily preempted back in the late 2010s and anything to do with these small wireless facilities. Larger towers, cities can still regulate, but if the equipment meets a certain cubic footage, we're heavily limited. We've issued 4 so far. 3 were in Paso Grill. 1 was the one in the waterfront at Maritana. We have been speaking with the engineers recently. They are going to lower the height of that pole. There might be a little bit of flexibility in relocating it. I don't know to what extent that would actually help the property owner there, but we're just reviewing our options. But they are going to at least lower the height of the pole by about 10 feet. That should help a little bit, at least with the view from across the water. And really, as was brought up before, the ability to limit them is based on safety. If it's a public safety issue, we can require them to relocate them. We can't usually outright deny them. And there's very limited design criteria we can implement, which is basically pole color and making sure that any wires are within conduit or routed within a pole. So it's been discussed pretty extensively, and those are limitations.
So I did read something that said it can't be any higher than the highest other pole within 500 feet?
Correct. And the one on Maritana in particular was limited to it's just in range of a pole on Gulf Boulevard that's significantly taller, but we have worked with them and they are going to make it the height of the other poles on Maritana, which are 38.5 feet. So they were willing to lower it to that height.
Thank you.
Okay. Museum update, 5E.
Yes, so we have a message from Catherine at the Gulf Beaches Historical Museum. April 19th at 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. there will be guided walking tours of historic Pass the Grill. You can find information about that on the museum Facebook page or website. And there's an Eventbrite link for that as well. And I think they also have an event in May, something to do with the Skyway Bridge at that time too. And then a reminder that May is Historic Preservation Month. So cupcakes next month at our meeting.
I wanted to, something that I've been kind of mulling over in my mind, especially as we're getting more and more of these demolitions and things coming up. I know it's near and dear to all of our hearts, obviously, and seeing these structures go down is heartbreaking. Is it possible to increase the cost to obtain a permit for demolition and then take that money and put it into the historic museum? Because we have all of these historic properties that are gone, or going to be gone. What are we going to have to show for it down the road? So I kind of feel like if you're going to take down a historic property that is who we are as a community, then you should be responsible for helping to kind of make it permanently remembered, I guess. I don't know if that's legal or allowed or...
That sounds like a tough one. You already lost your house, and now we're going to charge you a fee.
Well, we can't do retroactive, but that was what I kind of jokingly said, make them do a...
Well, and in
have to pay
some
towards the
cases,
flag.
it's you lost your house. Some cases, it's I just want a bigger
You
house.
chose to do this.
I think the question would be, and this might be something we would probably have to get more guidance from staff, not that you don't have enough to do already, is whether or not in like a demolition fee, can there be a portion of that money or some amount of that money that goes to some sort of like, the museum or some sort of plaques or historic designation or something like that. I don't know enough about government to know how that works as far as that goes, but I believe there's, I see lots of add-on charges or everything else there is in the world, so I don't know whether that's something that is doable, that we could, increase the demolition fee and have a amount that goes towards something historic without designating what that is now. So I guess I would just ask maybe I know this one wasn't quite on the agenda, but maybe we put it on the agenda for next month, that we talk about whether or not demolition fees can be increased and what we can put in them, if we can do.
And I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to this already, but what is the fee for making application for historic designation, and what is the fee for demolition of a historic resource?
So demolition's $50. We are currently evaluating our fees, not necessarily for trust fund purposes, but it's been decades in some cases since we've updated our fees, and there's different expectations now than there were back then. So that would be something we were looking at. Local historic designation, I think we made the conscious decision to not have a cost associated with that as an incentive. We've never charged for that I'm aware of, and I don't know that we would, want to charge for that service, but for demolition, given that the staff time that goes into that, we're looking into that.
Well, that is such a gift.
Yeah.
The amount of time that you all spend on these historic designation applications is huge. That is a really great gift that you're giving.
But I think it makes, I'm glad we're doing it that way. But if the city overall is looking at fee increase for certain things, that might be a consideration, whether that could be something historic involved in some of that
Or
stuff.
maybe even just an optional fee. Maybe someone would opt in if it included their plaque.
Made them sleep better at night? Yeah. Okay, so, and then member Deschelle, you wanted to talk about the waiving?
So the sod bonds, and I'm not very well versed on this. I only know, unfortunately, because there's a couple of situations where I've had to recuse myself. And sod bonds were paid up front, and I know the commission has just come back and said there is the waiving of the sod bond fee. So are you all aware of the sod bonds?
No, I'm not.
So basically, am I allowed to speak to something that's already been voted on and approved or passed or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as an example, I'll use for my mom, who had 808 Passive Way. She was absolutely heartsick over the general store being demolished. I mean, crying does not begin to put it into words. But then on top of it, she had to put forward a sod bond, because when the structure comes down, you have to say that you're going to do up to 120% of the value of the sod that's going to be utilized to kind of go where that structure was. Interestingly, you're not required to put in any irrigation to help the sod grow. So basically, you're putting in this money, which for her was like $15,000 for, I'm sure there's a reason, but for her it was really a hard pill to swallow. So thankfully, now the commission has come back, and the mayor, I believe, to say that the sod bonds are now being waived going forward. I guess my question is that a city-wide, or is that only in our historic designation?
That is citywide.
Citywide, okay.
And is there any reimbursement of sod bonds that were paid?
Yes, we will reimburse if a request is made. We're not automatically issuing them. Some are nearing completion and they'll be getting their money back soon anyway. That's something we automatically do when we issue the building permit. But for anyone who has paid a sod bond based on demolition post-storm and who wants to get that back, just reach out to our building department and we'll process them. It does take a little bit of time. In a lot of cases, they have already been deposited in the account, so it takes a little bit of time to process, but anybody is eligible for that.
Okay, good. So moving on, I think it's number 6, information item 6A is the current Mary Pier lease. And if I can just mention that, I had asked Brandon to put it on this because of what we kind of talked about earlier with the Mary Pier and trying to explore some things. And I would put, is it in the packet? Did you do that?
It's in the packet, yes.
Yeah, and I was given one from the city manager a couple weeks ago when I met, but I don't think there's anything to talk about. I mean, that's just for informational purposes. You all can read those might be relevant at some point, but it was really just a request to make sure that we had an opportunity to see that. So with that, unless someone wants to talk about it, I would go on to 6B, which was the information item on 2103 and 2105 Gulf Way.
Yes. And thank you to Mr. Stover for his patience. I asked if he wanted to attend the Historic Preservation Board meeting to discuss this. Now, based on current code regulations and requirements, these items do not need to be brought to the Historic Preservation Board. If the amendments are passed as drafted, they would be brought forward to you for comment prior to moving on to commission. If we could pull up the PowerPoint, please. Get down to that. So this is proposed for 2103 and 2105 Gulf Way. These are lots 106 and 107 of Block J of Phillips Division, with a vacated alley between the two. That would be combined for a single-family development purpose. The proposed size would be just under 110 by just over 100 feet. There are two similarly sized lots in the vicinity. You have 2200 Sunset Way, up just north of this property, and 102 22nd Avenue. This one is locally historically designated. Now this, of course, 102 22nd Avenue has two structures on it. It has the cottage on the west side, has the primary home on the east side. They were combined prior to any regulations in the city for this type of lot combination. It is not one structure that crosses the lot lines like we tend to see in other districts, as well as in the case for 2200 Sunset Way. The combination would allow for a house large development. I have spoken with the applicant briefly about this. This will move on to City Commission after we share this information with you. But the applicant intends to build a home that's centered on the lot. It would not be formally required to provide larger setbacks than the house large, which would be 7 feet on the sides, but I do understand that he does look to center the home on the combined lot. This would comply with the combination restriction that's placed on lot combinations in the forthcoming regulations. That would be no more than 2 lots of record can be combined to accommodate additions or new development. You can see here the survey. You did see the northern lot, which was a contributing structure, was approved for demolition under a case late last year. The southern structure was built in 2004. It is, of course, non-contributing, but both would be taken down for single-family home development purposes. So I just wanted to share that with you. As I mentioned, this will move on to the City Commission after this. Did you have any questions generally?
First, I could say I apologize. We would have got to this earlier if I knew you were sitting out there. I mean, I know it's. More interested in the stop on. Yeah, I was going to say, I know it's been breathtakingly interesting. So, just so I'm clear, if in fact our new proposals go through the commission or are passed, then ultimately this would be something that would come through us. Correct.
Correct. Any project would be subject to design review. Yes.
Okay, so we aren't there anyway, but. And the other thing is 2103 still exists, so we're talking about ultimately a demolition and building a single home there. Is that right? Okay. So you're just finding if you can put the lots together before you demolish the other one, right? Correct. Okay. All right. That's the only question. This is just for information purposes. I appreciate.
And there's nothing in our code that says, I mean, it says no more than 2 lots to be combined, but it doesn't have a finite measurement on no more than 2 lots or this measurement. Okay.
It does not.
Okay, well, are we doing this for recommendation then, or just for information?
No recommendation. In the future, it would be for recommendation, but based on the current code language, I just wanted to share this with you before it moves on.
Okay.
So.
All right. Very good. Okay, so now we will be talking about the next meeting, which is on May 1st, 2025. Anybody have anything to add to that or any problems with that date? All right, otherwise we are adjourned.